City Kickboxing was the place to go to if you wanted to become an MMA champion, especially in the UFC. I mean, the gym literally had won Gym of the Year in 2022. And this was no surprise because they had guys like Izzy and Volkanovski, pound for pound fighters at that gym. How could they not get Gym of the Year? I mean, the gym's run from 2019 to 2022 was legendary. I was seriously considering this gym to be kind of a dynasty. I really thought they were going to start taking over all the divisions, especially since they had talent in all divisions. But now, as of December 2023, City Kickboxing hasn't been looking so well. And that begs the question, what exactly happened to City Kickboxing? Now, the first person I want to talk about is Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker in 2019, going into 2020, was becoming a top contender for the belt in the lightweight division. He was on a 3-fight win streak, and then it got stopped by Dustin Poirier. He then went on to fight Michael Chandler, which he got absolutely decimated by. He then fought Nasrat, which was a decent win for him. But then after that, he went on a 2-fight losing streak against Islam and Arnold Allen. And speaking of the Arnold Allen defeat, that was at featherweight. This man is a big enough lightweight, and he tried to cut weight to go to featherweight. In all honesty, he was looking rough. The man, I think, was going through a midlife crisis. I don't know who agreed why they let that man go to featherweight. Whichever nutritionist or whichever coach allowed him and gave him the green light to do that deserves a felony just for that. But Dan Hooker's case isn't the worst looking at it from now, because then he went on to fight Claudio and he beat him, which a lot of people thought he was going to submit him because he was going up against a really good submission artist. Then, which I believe is his best win till date, is Jalen Turner. A complete slugfest, fight of the year contender, which he was losing in the beginning, made an insane comeback and decisively won against Jalen Turner. So he slowly climbing the ranks back up again. How the current landscape is looking for him right now, he's not so far off from getting a title shot, especially if he beats a top 5 guy. But like I mentioned, he is in a way better place compared to the next person I'm about to talk about, Brad Riddell. Now, Brad Riddell kind of follows the same story as Hooker, but it gets a lot worse for him. As you can see, starting out 2019 to 2020, even 21, he was on a 4-fight win streak. And he's also in the lightweight division, a stacked division where he's getting wins. He's beating guys like Drew Dober, which is a pretty solid win. But then it just went downhill very fast for him. 3-fight losing streak against Fiziev, which is nothing to be ashamed about. Fiziev is a top 5 guy. Then against Jalen Turner, same thing. Jalen Turner is arguably a top 5 guy. And then against Renato Moicano. Moicano was called in on a short notice, and he still ended up finishing him. And that's another thing. He isn't just losing, he's getting finished. 3-fight finishing losing streak. That's crazy. Personally, I love Moicano, but Brad Riddell was supposed to win that fight. He obviously did not, and he ended up pretty much retiring. 2021, he was considered an up-and-comer, arguably top 10, maybe even top 5 guy. Could potentially fight for the belt in his career very soon. To a year later, he essentially retires after losing 3 in a row. But this wasn't the first and only time where a talent from City Kickboxing, a promising star, did not live up to the expectation, especially with this next person I'm about to talk about. And this next person is Blood Diamond. As you could see, Blood Diamond's record, there's only 3 fights. And no, I did not make a mistake. He only had 3 fights in the UFC and lost all of them. Now, Blood Diamond was supposed to be a crazy kickboxer. He was supposed to be kind of a second Adesanya, a prominent, rising, striking contender in the welterweight division. But as you could see from his record, it did not go well. 3-fight losing streak and kicked out the UFC. The next person I want to talk about is a fighter in the flyweight division that was supposed to be fighting for the belt, but fought for the interim belt and came up short. And that is Kai Kara France. Similar to Dan Hooker and Brad Riddell, Kai Kara France kind of had the same trend. 2019, 2020, he was doing really well, with one loss coming up, Brandon Moreno. He had an insane fight with Brandon Royval, and then went on a 3-fight win streak, beating guys like Cody Garbrandt, and his best win, in my opinion, Askar Askarov, where he was the underdog in that fight, and a lot of people did expect him to lose, especially because they really thought Askar Askarov was going to be the next thing in the flyweight division. He was going to be the next. And like I said, he then ended up fighting for the interim belt against Brandon Moreno again. He ended up getting finished. He then fought Amir Albazi, which he lost split decision, but it wasn't that bad considering a lot of people thought that he was robbed, and me included. I did feel like he won the fight, but nonetheless, it's still a loss on his record. Unlike Blood Diamond and Brad Riddell, he could still kind of come back. He's kind of in the similar situation as Dan Hooker, where he isn't so far off, but he could definitely still make a comeback. And of course, I can't talk about City Kickboxing without talking about their most prominent fighter, Israel Adesanya. Now, Izzy's trend was the same as Dan Hooker's, Kai Kara France's, the City Kickboxing trend, as I like to call it. In 2019, running through the division, became champ, lost to Jan Blaho, which was nothing to hold his head down to because he went up a division. Went on a 3-fight winning streak, ends up finding Alex Pereira, gets TKO'd from him, then fights Pereira again, finally accomplishes what he was dreaming to do, which is be his arch nemesis, KO of the year contender. Then goes on to get completely dominated, outclassed by Sean Strickland. And kind of retires after that because he says that he won't be back until a while. I feel like this is what stamped the downfall of City Kickboxing. Their most prominent champion yet gets completely outclassed and then decides to retire for a bit. Now, real quick, I did want to mention Volkanovski. He did lose to Makhachev, but technically he is still the champion of the featherweight division. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens between him and Ilya Topuria. If Volkanovski does end up losing, that's just set in stone that the era of City Kickboxing is done. But they do have one hope. They do have one hope, and that is Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg is City Kickboxing's last-ditch effort, last hope to get back in title contention in the UFC period. As we take a look at his record, he came in to the Contender Series in 2020, first round finish. His next fight, he unfortunately loses in a finish, but then look at all of his fights later. Now, these guys are unknown. A lot of these are probably some cab drivers. 4-fight finishing streak, not even just winning streak. He's been finishing guys. And now comes his biggest test yet against a former title contender, a guy who arguably beat John Jones and Dominic Reyes. If he could get past this, he easily needs a top 5 opponent after that. He has a chance to get to the title and win the title. He is insanely talented, and it is City Kickboxing's last-ditch effort. Now, as I think about why they're in a downward trajectory, what exactly happened, I really can't pinpoint what exactly happened. I, however, can see the reason for Brad Riddell's losses and Blood Diamond's losses, and that's just experience. I feel like they're just way too inexperienced in MMA. They're fantastic strikers, but MMA striking is a lot different than just kickboxing or Muay Thai striking in general. So I do believe they were just pushed a little too early. And in Dan Hooker's and Kai Kara France's case, especially for Kai Kara France, I think it was just bad luck. He was getting his way back to title contention and then got robbed from the judges. And in Dan Hooker's case, he was just given straight killers. Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Arnold Allen, straight killers. But he's making the comeback as well. He's beat a killer in Jalen Turner. He's on a 2-fight winning streak too. So he's getting back up there. And in terms of Volkanovski losing to Makhachev and Izzy losing to Strickland, them two were just unfortunately just beaten fair and square. No way around it. So all in all, City Kickboxing has fell off, unfortunately, especially with Izzy losing his belt. And I'd say the era of City Kickboxing would be officially over if Volkanovski loses his featherweight belt. But like always, guys, what do you guys think is the reason that they haven't been having the same success as they had in the prior years?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?